Well, thank you very much. Well, I welcome you all, as you can probably read. My name is Sebastien Zoesch. I'm the CEO of the German Vegetarian Society, or Association, however you want to translate it. Today I'm going to talk about, well, one end on the invention of the B12 toothpaste, but also on the general status of B12 in vegetarians and vegans. So I'll start with a little introduction of myself and of the organization that I'm representing, and about the personal motivation behind inventing B12 toothpaste. Then a little general about B12, its functions, its sources. Then the B12 level in the various diets, like omnivores, vegetarians, vegans, because there are also some misconceptions around, as I perceive. And then, of course, about the vitamin B12 in toothpaste, about the general advantages, and about the results of the empirical study that we undertook. And then I'll draw a conclusion, and I guess we will probably still have some time for discussions afterwards. If you have any questions in between, feel free to just raise your questions, or raise your hand and ask questions. Okay, coming to the organization, WIBU, that's the abbreviation in German, that's the name by which we are recognized usually. Well, we are 120 years old. We have been founded in 1892, which I don't think is a merit in itself, but some people are always impressed by that, so that's why I name it. I came to the organization about in 2008. That's when we had the World Vegetarian Congress, which is now here, like in Dresden, Germany. Since then, there are a lot of things have changed. I had a complete makeover, like a new logo, a new focus. We have had new staff. We changed. We moved now to Berlin. We used to have 3 employees. Now we have, well, it's actually already changed. Now I think we are closer to 12 employees by now. Of course, a lot of volunteers. We have about 100 regional groups and contacts. We have, of course, a magazine. That's one edition you can see, and a discount card for members. And of course, we have various campaigns and activities. One is like a lot of media outreach. We do that a lot. We have a Meat-Free Monday campaign, which is called Veggie Day or Veggie Day Thursday. We're also doing the Meat Out, I think, which was actually invented in the US, like by Farm, as far as I know. Veggie World is a trade show that we are having with about 30,000 paying participants each year. We have a label that we're promoting. We do political lobbying. We do scientific studies, which is one of the studies I'm presenting. Of course, product development, like, well, not only the toothpaste, but other products as well. Well, we had something like a veggie speed dating this year, first time to come, which was quite like the media liked it a lot, so we are making a whole tour with 10 different cities now in Germany. And of course, and we are organizing a medical conference with with the most prestigious hospital, like the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Germany, so to speak. And we have a big catering campaign, which is actually so successful that even the Ministry of Environment, like the Federal Ministry of Environment, is supporting it financially. So this is pretty much what we as an organization do. Well, coming to myself, just so that you get a brief overview, just to let you know, I'm not an expert in vitamin B12 or any like scientific or like human or medical expert in any way. So I've been studying cognitive science as a bachelor. Then I went to PETA for 1 year, mainly in Germany, but a little bit in US as well. Did a training program there, and then I thought, okay, I want to dedicate my life for improving the world, promoting veganism. That's then why I went to study management and nonprofit organization. Was quite a new major that was just starting up in Germany. So this is what I was studying then. Yeah, to learn like the evil corporate side, because you can learn a lot from from people who are making who are somebody who is earning like $3,000 a day. They really know how to sell their stuff and how to really know how the systems work. So that's where I went, and I wrote my master thesis actually on strategic management in nonprofit organizations. So even companies like that have a nonprofit branch. And then, of course, I did interns at different organizations like Compassion World Farming, which is a British organization, 4 Paws, it's an Austrian-based organization, different organizations. Well, I'm also investing in like some vegetarian, well, they're actually both vegan restaurants, just to get like more ideas of the corporate side. I had the honor, the privilege to participate in the writing of 2 German versions of books. One was the Vegan by Kath Clements. It's actually a British book, which has been translated into German, and I was asked by the publishing house to help. The same for, you might recognize this book. It's I think it's kind of like the same cover in the US, wasn't it? Or like the eating animals from Jonathan Safran Foer. And well, what happened there, my friend from Belgium, he said it's kind of funny because the Belgium actually have been faster in publishing a Belgian version than the Germans published a German version. And well, when the Belgian version came out, my Belgian colleague, he was saying that the Belgians, when they read the book, they said, well, it's all really interesting what he's writing, but everything he's saying is only concerning the United States. But we are in Belgium here, so it's probably much better here in Belgium, so I don't have to change anything. So we were afraid that this would probably happen in Germany as well. So we contacted the publishing house and they said, yeah, we had the same idea. And so pretty much what we did, we wrote an appendix, which turned out to be 16 pages long. It was quite long. And for every figure that Jonathan Safran Foer mentioned in, like, where he was mentioning an American figure, we would have like a footnote explaining how the situation was in Germany. For example, like he would state in his book that in America, 99% of the meat comes out from factory farms. So we calculated how it is in Germany, and actually it is different. It's 98% in Germany. Wow. Now the industry would of course say, well, you see, it's twice as good. We get 2% of more ethical meat, and they only got 1%. But of course, like, we could make clear by showing the figures, you could say, okay, there are some differences, but you really, if you want to be honest, it's not much of a difference. In terms of which conclusions to draw, should you eat meat or not, that's not really much of a difference. Yeah, so this was quite a nice project. And of course, some inventions as well, like the toothpaste, this is the topic of today, and the trade show, which is quite successful actually. We started it I think 2 years ago in Germany, and it has already spread to 4 different countries. So this is actually quite interesting. Actually, my friends in Belgium, they just had one a few days ago, and I'm very anxious of hearing how it went for them. And above all, like, this is all very nice what I'm saying about myself, but actually I'm very forgetful and lazy, which is the most, actually, for the project I'm about to present, this is very, very important because I'm so forgetful, I'm always like, my assistant, she's always like carrying stuff around with me because I would forget otherwise. And I'm very lazy, so I'm not very much keen on working. So, but which actually triggered the invention of the toothpaste, because I would always forget to take the pills, and my B12 level would go down, but I was just too lazy to think about it all the time. So which was one of the main ideas. And also, yeah, personal motivation, this is actually me now, so this is me like several years ago. I think like 5 to 6 years ago, I was more like a more radical animal rights activist, and at that time we had a group where I was studying, we were doing animal rights activism, and then there was one girl in my group, or in our group, so to speak, which kind of like we've all been active, and then suddenly she said that she cannot really concentrate on her studies anymore, and she fainted several times. And so we asked her, well, have you checked your B12 level? And she said, yeah, I got a blood test, everything's fine, I don't know what's happening. And this kept on for weeks to come, and she still wouldn't get better. And then we asked her again one day, and she said, well, did you really check your B12? Yeah, I got a blood test. But then we asked, well, was it just a regular blood test, or did you really make sure that they were sampling for B12? I said, well, but the doctor knows what they're doing. I said, I don't know if the doctor knows what they're doing. So she checked again, and apparently they did make a blood test, but they didn't check for B12. So it turned out that it was actually the B12, and she was really like a really strong animal rights advocate, but this scared her off so much, like, experiencing firsthand the B12 deficiency. So actually she wasn't a vegan afterwards anymore, and she stopped being an activist, which really, which kind of like really made me think. And I thought, okay, well, we discussed with her, why are taking your B12? And she says, yeah, it's so unnatural to take the pills, and every time I have a discussion, people pinpoint, oh, you're taking pills, you say it's not natural if you're being vegan. So I don't want to take it, and so I thought, besides myself being forgetful and lazy, there must be other ways of improving the B12. Before I come to the solution, I'm just talking a little bit more about the B12 in general, so we are all on the same page here. Do you actually know what functional B12 or vitamin B12, to be correct, usually helps in the body?
Well, memory, focus.
What's this? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Cofactor of DNA replication.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, well, yeah, you saw that. You saw the picture. He's a smart guy. Okay, yes, it's DNA synthesis. Again, I'm not an expert, but I've been told that that's what our scientific board said that I should say. So it's for the DNA synthesis, the maturation and regeneration of the nerve cells, and lowering the homosystem level. There are a lot of different factors for the homosystem level, but B12 is one important for them, which of course is then also lowering the risk of heart attack. It's actually, hold on, it should, yeah, I should, pardon me?
What is the homosystem level?
Well, it's just a factor that's determined in the blood, and you should try to keep it as low as possible, or not, yeah, should try to keep it quite low. I'll come to that in a minute. And so it is actually quite important. You know, DNA is important, as you all know, and nerve cells are important. And what's also quite important that if you have dysfunctions, they're usually non-reversible. And it takes a long time for them to recognize. It's not, the symptoms are not really clear-cut, so you cannot really say, oh, I'm having that. You might feel a little, I don't know, some itchy fingers or something like that. And if you're really having problems, it's often cannot be reversed, so it's really important. Yeah, like if you get that deficiency, that's all what can happen. Doesn't sound too...
Eyesight? Does it also affect your eyesight?
Not that I know of, yeah. So, like I said, the homocysteine level can increase if you have too little B12, so it's increasing your risk of cardiovascular diseases. You have some special kind of anemia. That's when the red blood parts are getting low, like are blowing up and getting less. Like I said, if damage to the central nervous system, especially if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you can really get serious disorder, psychological development of the baby. That can really, and then it's really, really bad because it's not reversible for the babies especially. And you don't really notice that it's, you know, it's B12 deficient. You just, maybe it just screams or it doesn't do anything, but it just doesn't develop properly. And if you have a higher age, of course you have a higher risk of dementia if you don't having enough B12. And here's actually does anybody know what intrinsic factor means? Yeah, okay, here's the expert. Yes, what is it?
Intrinsic factor is a substance secreted in the stomach, which helps the absorption of B12.
Yeah,
and,
pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, so it binds B12 and then the acid in your stomach interacts with it.
Exactly. It's a protein in your stomach, and it's used, you need that actually, like, that's why it's called a factor, kind of like, you need it to take up the B12 if it's absorbed by the stomach. And if you don't have that factor, even if you take a lot, like even if you're a meat eater and you're getting a lot of B12 in your body, it cannot be absorbed. So that's another advantage, I'll come to that later, of the B12 toothpaste, because it doesn't rely on the intrinsic factor because it's absorbed through what's called the passive diffusion in the gums. So even if you don't have that factor, you will get enough B12. And of course, some basic facts. I mean, we said you can be deficient, but you really don't need a lot. You only need like 1 micrograms a day. Of course, the recommended intake is a little higher because not everything that goes in your body, like that you swallow, actually, is really absorbed by the body, and it's produced by microorganisms. So it's contained actually in meat, fish, cheese, milk, and eggs. So that doesn't sound too vegan, does it? Yeah. Well, I would actually like hearing the talk. For that, actually, I should say, like animal meat, what's it called? Like cow's fish, cow's cheese, cow's milk, chicken eggs, and fishy fish? How do you call it? Well, like really animal products. So, of course, no seitan or tofu added to that. Of course, there are a lot of rumors out there that plant-based food contains a lot of vitamin B12, but actually it can contain traces, but it's in many cases it's really not a lot. You cannot really rely on that. We might have another talk from Sebastien from Indonesia, he was writing his PhD about tempeh, and there might be some more vitamin B12 in tempeh in Indonesia, the way it's manufactured there, but the way food is produced here in the States and in Europe, that you really don't get a lot of B12. So these are like, when we did the survey, like we did a survey for the study, that's what the people all replied. Like they had the weirdest, like it's in sauerkraut, it's in beer. I like the idea of having it in beer, but yeah. And actually, people like us, they also like the idea that it only contains traces because that allows them to eat more and more. So you have to get 2 gallons of beer to meet your B12. No, but or soil. I don't know who comes up with soil or lupine, and I don't know, really sprouts, whatever. But as I said, it can contain traces, but it's really not a reliable source. And really to make sure, I mean, we did a study, I'm just coming to that, where we'll see actually how the B12 is in vegans and non-vegans. So, you know, there's no ensured intake of vitamin B12 in a plant-based diet, naturally. So if you're looking, for example, at a study, this study was already done or published in 2003. It was measuring the homosystem level, which is only, where B12 is only one factor. But here you can see that's like the deficiency level. So that's normal, that's good. That means, you know, you're a little deficient, and red is, you know, you don't want to be there. And then here you have the non-vegans, the lacto-ovo-vegetarians, and the vegans, or non-vegetarians, so to speak. So as you can clearly see, you know, most of them are quite green, so they're okay. Some of them have some problems, and really only very, very few have big problems.
That information is in the US? Or is it
I would have to check which, I think it, Herman, might have been a European study, but I think it doesn't make much of a difference. And lacto-ovo-vegetarians, they are quite, you know, most of them, more than 60%, have already like a higher deficiency, and the vegans even more. So this is really not good news. You might once in a while hear that B12 is also a problem in meat eaters, and that there are actually more meat eaters that have a B12 deficiency than vegans. But this is just from, in my opinion, this is vegan propaganda. Like the way it's phrased, they talk by absolute numbers. And of course, if you have 90% of meat eaters, like compared with less than 1% of vegans, in total, like in absolute numbers, you might have more meat eaters having a B12 deficiency, but not in relative terms. Yes?
I'm a family doctor, actually.
Yes.
And so I do see a lot of patients who are meat eaters,
Yeah.
not vegans, who do have B12 deficiency.
Yes.
Pretty commonly, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know statistics,
Yeah.
but just my personal experience, I've seen it many times.
Yeah. Well, like the statistics actually say that it's between 5 and 7% in the regular population, and in elderly people, it's getting more. It might be 10 to 30%. Now, has anybody paid attention so far and knows why for elderly people they have a higher level? Like even the meat eaters have a higher B12 deficiency rate. Why is that so? Okay, who paid attention? You did. Oh, you're trying just to confuse.
How do you diagnose B12 deficiency in patients, if you don't mind me asking?
I think most we do rely on blood tests, you know, to see it. Very rarely do I see very extreme B12 deficiency and getting some of those more extreme manifestations that we can just recognize.
Yeah.
Most of the time, we do routine blood tests.
Yeah, that's like this. You're more like in the level 1. Yeah,
we might see
yeah. You can see here. Like, I mean, level 1 and 2. I mean, if that's 20, so that's 10%. And if you consider, you know, only the people who are kind of like sick go to the doctors, you probably, you know, people who feel perfectly okay. So that might explain. I mean, that's perfectly.
More extreme deficiencies?
Pardon me?
More extreme deficiencies that would be noticeable without blood tests?
I see.
Yeah, as you can maybe like, you know, in your fingers, you might feel it and stuff like that. After you might faint or forget things. Okay. So coming back to my question. Okay, now I'm checking who's paying attention. Otherwise, I shall stop the talk. Why do elderly people have a higher rates of B12 deficiency?
There's something, wasn't it?
Less digestive.
Yes.
This intrinsic factor.
Yes, exactly. It's intrinsic factor. So, of course, elderly people, you know, they don't necessarily eat less meat, or they take enough, they still take enough B12 in their body, even if they're meat eaters, like regular meat eaters, but they don't have that intrinsic factor in their stomach, so it's not absorbed so well. That's why they're more likely to develop a B12 deficiency, even though they are meat eaters and actually getting enough inside there, like, or swallowing it enough. Now, this is a study like that has been done years before. Like about 10 years later, we did another study, which is, I'm coming to that. And this is, this didn't complain to meat eaters. Like I said, it said about 5 to 7% on average of meat eaters have a B12 deficiency. So in our study, we actually showed that the vegetarians have a slightly increased chance, which of course makes sense, of B12 deficiency, which was 8% on average. And the vegans, like I'm coming to that, had on average 40%. So 40% of the vegans have been B12 deficient, which is actually quite a lot. But then we looked into more, because we had a big sample of people. So then we actually split it up the vegan groups, and we asked, we asked them beforehand how long they have been vegan so far. And you probably know that your body has a how do you say, a reserve. Yeah, a reserve of B12, so actually it doesn't show that easily. So we divided it up into people who have been short-term vegans and long-term vegans, so which means up to a year and more than a year. And then we also asked people if they're taking any supplements or in fortified food or getting injections or anything, or if they don't care at all. So here's, if we split up the 40%, this is actually what came up. If you have people who are not vegan for a long time and who are actually taking supplements, you only have 20%, which is good. But then if they even if they're taking the supplements, but they increase, like if they are vegan for more than 2 years, it's already up to 40%. And if they're not taking any supplements and are vegan for more than 2 years, it's up to 80%. So that's a lot. So can anybody raise his hand who has been born in September or before, like in the year, like who's born between January and September? That's about more than 80%. So this is about the number of people who actually would be B12 deficient. So that's actually quite a lot. So it is really a problem. I mean, this is what the study has been shown, and it really shows also clearly that it makes perfect sense. People who are not vegan that long and who supplement are getting way less. I have to say, with the supplements, it's a very broad concept of supplement. Like, we have asked the people, are you taking care of eating fortified foods? Are you getting injections? Are you taking veg1 or anything? So this is quite a broad group of people, like a quite heterogeneous group. I would assume somebody who is really regular taking like tablets like the veg1 tablet, yeah, from the Vegan Society, they would probably be they probably wouldn't have they probably would have way less than 40%. I'm assuming that it's that this is really enough. But just like in general, if people think, oh, I guess I'm okay, I care about eating fortified food and everything, it should be less.
Where does the B12 in a supplement come from?
Well, it depends. It's usually manufactured, or it's also coming from microorganisms. Yes.
Is there one that's better than another, or is there?
I'll come to that in a minute. Yeah. Okay.
One question. Do you have any statistics for older people? Or how old are these people that you...
Well, these actually have been, actually that's another point, because I actually, like this, most of them have been actually quite young, but I assume that the older, they actually have, well, of course, like naturally an even higher rate of B12 deficiency. And especially if you, for example, like, as again, if you don't have that intrinsic factor, even taking the tablets like every day doesn't help you much. I had a colleague of mine, and he was B12 deficient. Then he got one of these high concentrated pills, and he would take them every day. And then he would, after 3 months, he would get tested again. It didn't change.
So did he swallow it, or did he put it under his tongue?
He had a little under the tongue, but that wasn't enough. Because actually, when swallowing it, the idea is you only absorb about 1%. So if, for example, like the veg1 has 10 micrograms, and if you swallow, like if you let it under your tongue and 1% is absorbed, that's only 0.1 microgram that you're absorbing by the gums. So this is, yes. Well, but I think if you don't have that intrinsic factor, it's not made for people who don't have that intrinsic factor. That's the point. Yeah.
Those supplements in North America are 1,000 micrograms.
Well, but are people taking that daily?
You don't have to take it daily. But Dr. Michael Greger did have some words about this, and he was suggesting that in Europe there's more B12 deficiency amongst vegans compared to North America, simply because of the different types of foods that we have over here, the soy milk, or whatever it was. He implied something like that. I don't know the exact thing.
Well, yeah, you're actually touching a good point. The thing is, the fortification guidelines are different. So actually they raised it in Europe. So I think for one portion, if it's B12 fortified, they put 2.5 micrograms of B12 in there. And I think in the US it's 6 micrograms. So in fortified food is double the amount. But then again, I think even in the States, organic food is not allowed to be fortified. I mean, at least in Germany, many vegans actually, they also prefer organic food. So they would get like organic soy milk, and organic soy milk cannot be.
Over here does have.
Is it allowed?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's not legal in Europe. If it's organic, it cannot be fortified in any way. There cannot be any artificial vitamins inside there. Yeah, but then you probably might be a little luckier. Okay. So let's come. So why do we have that high B12 deficiency rate in the world, and especially amongst vegetarians? Of course, there's a lot of misinformation about the vitamin B12. That is, people, they don't like to take the pills, the drops, or they don't want to get injections or anything. If they do take something, they only take it irregularly. So they're getting the Veg1, but they just take it once a week. That's not what it's actually made for. The dosage of the food supplements is too low. So, like I said, for example, in Germany, or if you don't eat a lot of that fortified things, and there might be insufficient intake because of that lack of intrinsic factor. I think we covered that topic. So, what are, like, on the other side, what are the advantages of having a product like a toothpaste? So, you don't need any pills, syringes, injections, anything. It's like, I found it in discussions that people absorb it, kind of like take it as more natural. If you take, well, I'm getting injections, they're like, really, whoa. So you are vegan and you need to get injections to get your B12, or you have to take a pill every day. This doesn't sound quite natural to most people. But if you say, well, you are brushing your teeth and I'm brushing my teeth as well, so what's the big deal? Yeah, it's just a side effect, so you don't have to think about it. Even people for me who are very lazy and forgetful, they cannot forget it unless I forget to brush my teeth, which sometimes, no, it doesn't happen. Yeah, it's more likely that people remind you that you didn't brush your teeth than they remind you that you didn't take your pill, because that's something that's more easy to recognize. Yeah, so it cannot be forgotten. Yeah. Yeah, the beer. Well, if you're getting too much. If you're trying to get too much B12 with beer, people will probably recognize as well. And of course, the dosage is sufficient. So in terms of other things, like we'll just see with the study. And and one of the big advantages is also that it's absorbed via the gums. And so the intrinsic factor is not really needed. Yeah, like I was saying with that colleague that I told you about, who took the pills for 3 months and they didn't change much, then he switched to the toothpaste, and 2 months later it was up the level. So that was pretty good. So he was very happy about that.
Can you describe the protocol for brushing with this toothpaste? Time?
Well, you open it up, you put it on no, it's just regular. You just brush your teeth twice a day. Like in the study, we asked the people just to regular brush the teeth twice a day using the regular amount that they're always using. And
Cold water, warm water?
No, it doesn't make any difference, no. Yeah, they spit it out. Yeah, no, it doesn't make. I mean, of course, there's a quite variety. Some people brush their teeth like 3 or 4 times a day. Some use like an electrical brush, but you only have a tiny bit. And some people really, like in the toothpaste commercial, they're using a lot of that. So there's quite some variety. But I'll just show you within the studies, it doesn't make. Yeah, it's.
To get the sufficient dosage, how long do we brush? 2 minutes each time?
Yeah, like regularly. Yeah, well, you shouldn't brush too shortly, and yeah, but then you should be fine. Yeah, regularly 2 minutes. Well, I'll just come to the results, and of course we didn't like stand in the bathroom and check every time they brushed, and we're taking times we just asked them, well, brush twice a day for 2 minutes. Use the regular amount, spit it out like you would always spit it out, like don't swallow it more than you usually do, but don't rinse your mouth more than you usually do. But of course, there has been variations. So if you really want to make sure you brush it a little longer and you don't, maybe you don't rinse your mouth that thoroughly, because if you swallow, of course, that's even better, because then you get it in your stomach as well. But it's not, you don't have to swallow. So yeah, coming to the question that was just been raised. So the sort of B12 we'll be using is cyano. I don't know how it's pronounced in English. Cyanocobalamin, which is the very same B12 that the Vegan Society in the UK is using for the Veg1. It has the most proof of effect. It's the most stable form. and it's also cost efficient, and there are no harmful side effects like any other sort of vitamin. So you cannot overdose it usually. And yeah, like I said, it's used in other supplements as well. If you look in the internet, you'll find all some kinds of weird information about, oh, this methyl cobalamin is much better, or that hydroxycobalamin. There are all kinds of out there, but and people are trying to sell one or the other. That's why they argue that this one is not good, that this is better. But it, like we know, we did a study with the actual effect, and that's what it showed. And other forms, they might be really like 10 times more expensive, or they might not be as stable. So even if they might be more bioavailable if they're really fresh. But if you put them somewhere in, they might just degrade, or they might just decompose themselves. And yeah, coming to the dosage, we have about 100 micrograms of vitamin B12 in 1 gram of toothpaste. And 1 gram of toothpaste, that's about your daily dosage. So if you brush your teeth twice, you're using about 1 to 1.5 micrograms grams of toothpaste. So you're getting, if you're using 1 gram of toothpaste, you're getting actually 100 micrograms of B12 on your gums twice a day. And absorbed, as I said, in the gums, it's about 1, maybe 2% that's being absorbed in the gums. And then you always swallow a small amount of the toothpaste, and then that's also being absorbed, if you have that intrinsic factor, through your stomach. So just a very theoretical calculation, you get about 3.6 micrograms a day. And as we've heard before, the recommendation is about 3 micrograms, so you get even 20% more, because in the end, you actually only need 1 microgram. Isn't it clear? So this is actually like the theory behind it. That's why we were choosing that dosage for the toothpaste. Yes?
So is there any difference between men and women in terms of absorption of B12?
Not that I know of, no. Also in terms of like smoking or non-smoking, there might be some, if you're really heavy smoker, that maybe the gum doesn't absorb so much anymore, but not that I know of, no.
Because most of our studies are all done on 40-year-old men.
Yeah, well, no, we had actually more. I think I'll come to that actually. I think we actually had more women. I'll come to that. Yeah, okay, coming to the setup of the toothpaste. Well, first we started out with an online survey, which to our surprise was really huge success. I think it was within less than a week. We had about 3,000 volunteers who said, oh, I want to participate in the study. So we had the lucky position that we were able to be really picky about our participants. So we can say, oh, anybody who's pregnant, anybody who is not completely healthy, we only want to have to make it, we could really pick out the best ones. So we choose about, I think, 127 to start with, between the age of 18 and 64. And the brushing period, like not all the day, was 5 weeks, so 5 weeks twice a day. People have been asked to really don't take any supplements or fortified foods, so they really had to be more careful of not taking anything else, which is actually more strict than normal life, because in normal life I'm sure you're getting some fortified foods once in a while. So this was actually more strict, and still we could see a very positive effect. And of course, we know that some vegans are very ambitious and they want to show, oh, I'm sure it's going to work. And we were afraid that some people might actually cheat or whatever and taking supplements in addition. So that's why we actually said, well, we'll have a placebo group, because this is like just good practice. And we had a so-called verum group. So this is the people who got the real B12. And you could not distinguish. People didn't know which one to get. So there was no way of cheating by taking any other supplements. 5 more minutes? Okay. And yes, so then, so we had 50% of them, 50% of them. But of course, the way it was done, first once we selected the people, we did an initial, we measured their B12 status at the beginning. And yes, well, this was the level that we had. We had more female than male participants, and we had about 30 vegetarians and 71 vegan participants. And now you're probably surprised why it says therapy group. Well, this is explained because actually the main study consists of the placebo group and the regular group. But we actually had to make a third group because when we first initially measured the B12 level of the people that we selected, there have been about like 30 of them, like the 40% that I mentioned before, who have been really B12 deficient. So we couldn't actually allow them to participate in the actual study because we said, well, you're really B12 deficient, you should go to a doctor. And by taking the toothpaste, well, first of all, we don't know yet if it's really working. And second of all, you have a 50% chance of getting a placebo, and we cannot risk you not getting any vitamin B12 for 5 more weeks. But then we said, well, but if you're very ambitious and it's your life, for the sake of science, we are very happy for you if you still want to participate, and if you don't want to go to the doctor, we'll provide you with toothpaste that's definitely not a placebo, and we can still see how it goes. And we had about 20 people who said, yes, I want to do it for the sake of science and for the good of the world, we'll participate. And that was like the distinction. So again, more females who have been brave enough, and most of them, of course, have been vegan because these are the people who are more likely to be deficient and more likely to be that ambitious to still want to participate. And actually, we're really lucky because it was very interesting to see if you are like really deficient, if it would also help, because it's a difference between maintaining a good status or helping you from a really low status to increase it. So there will always be 3 groups. And yes, of course, like I said, we had a comparison of the blood samples between 4 and after the 5-week testing period. And we measured 3 indicators of vitamin B12. One of them was the serum vitamin B12, so that's the B12 level in your blood. The second one, that's the most important one, is the Cobalamin. That's what it's officially called. And of course, the Homosystem, which is more indirect. It's very long-term, a very long-term indicator because it's also influenced by other factors as well. But by really comparing all these 3, you can really make sure how good or well the B12 level is. Can you agree to that, or do you test it as well? Yes. So we always had 3 levels. What do you test it? So yes, that was the starting point. Yeah, deficiency was that was the main indicator. Cobalamin. You were deficient if you had less than 90%. Of all the people tested, we had 43% of the vegans. Of all the people were vegans within the normal range. 27 were vegetarians within the normal range. We had 30% of people below the normal range, and out of these, most of them have been vegans. There were actually only 2 vegetarian people who were deficient, which of course makes sense. As said before, vegetarian you only have 8%, and if you're vegan, it's up to 40%. And here, well, yeah, you've seen that before. That's just what we came up with initially. So this is one of the results that Homosystem, as I said, that's the most longitudinal one. So that's always before washing the teeth or before the 5-week period and then afterwards. So here you can actually say that here you don't see really much of a difference. And for Homosystem, you actually have to say the lower the better. So you don't want to have a high level. So as I said, but then again, like the starting point, of course, this was just randomly selected. So you would expect the level to be the same. It didn't change much either if you took the toothpaste or not. I mean, it didn't make any difference. But for the therapy group, of course, who had a bad level because they have been B12 deficient, you can already see that it quite improved, even within only 5 weeks, because it's always easier to improve from a very bad level than if you're already quite good. So this actually, even for the long-term Homosystem, you could see some improvements.
How long was the study?
5 weeks.
So, I mean, if it gets worse over time due to the intrinsic factor decreasing, then staying the same, maybe that is sort of an improvement, actually. Although 5 weeks isn't that long, but...
I mean, sometimes. I mean, that's why it's always interesting to compare it with the placebo group, because even if it stays stable, but the others decline, that's also a sign that the toothpaste is working. Yeah, here we come, like that's the B12 in the blood, and here you can actually already see that's exactly what you were saying. Here, from the people who started out, like of course, these have been randomly selected because so this and this is the same because it was the same group that started out. And these one, they took the toothpaste, and there was like, yeah, it wasn't significant, but it stayed the same. It maintained the high level. And the people who got only the placebo, it really declined already quite a lot. So even within 5 weeks, they already have been down to the therapy group. But the therapy group, who of course started out low, within 5 weeks alone, they already went up to the regular level. So this already helped them to increase their level of vitamin B12 within 5 weeks. And the last and most important, the holotranscobalamin. Here again, you have this kind of like the same starting of both groups. The placebo, that's actually quite interesting. The change here wasn't significant. We didn't really, that might also be some statistical thing, but this actually didn't change. But here it went up a lot, and the yeah. And so this actually, I think, increased by about 60. That's the most important indicator. And this actually increased by about 65%. And for the therapy group, which of course has been really low at the beginning, their level actually tripled within 5 weeks. So this is really, really good news. But you also have to take into account that what I'm presenting here, that's just averaged all the time. So actually this one is how it changed. Like that's like the total range, I mean. So you can see there actually was quite some range. I mean, not at the beginning, that's how it started off.
Is that total range or is that confidence intervals?
No, that's total range. Yes. And that's, yeah, and then these are the ranges. So there actually also have been people where it didn't work within the 5-week period, but in most of the people it worked quite well. Especially, I think, for the therapy group, out of I think the ones who finished the study, that were 19 people, and 18 of them really improved their level quite a lot. So only like less than 5%, only one person who didn't show much of an improvement within that 5 weeks. Yes, well, you've seen that. Yeah, so actually if you're looking, like you've seen that before, and now if you look at the toothpaste, we are down to below 5%. So this is really a lot. So that's actually even better than going back to vegetarianism, which I guess is not an option for most of you. And it's also, so it's better than being short-term vegan, it's better than taking other supplements. So you're really very, very happy, and you're quite getting enough B12 with the toothpaste. So to sum it up, there has been significant improvement of the whole transcobalamin in that study, in that group that actually took the toothpaste. There have been improvement of all 3 indicators values of the therapy group. So if you really needed the B12, the body would readily absorb it through the toothpaste. So the exclusive use of the vitamin B12 toothpaste leads to a considerable improvement of vitamin B12 status during the time period of 5 weeks. So that's what, to put it very scientifically, that was the main conclusions of the people doing the study. So coming back and wrapping it up again, what allegedly contributes to improvement of vitamin B12, like herbs, seaweeds, blah, 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 that didn't help at all. I mean, that didn't show, like the placebo group, they went down. This is not a reliable source. But we actually added one more. Like, of course, there's the chance of getting fortified foods, which is one source, reliable source. Of course, you can take pills, you can get injections, drops, or whatever. And now we also have the options of taking the vitamin B12 toothpaste. Yes, so that's about it. Then thank you for listening. Yes, okay. Any questions? Yes. Well, that's a good question. Well, it's already being sold in Europe, and I've just spoken to the retailers. They're still having some legal issues with importing, exporting it to the US. But they said within the next few weeks and months, they'll probably have that solved, and then it's going to be on the US market as well. Yes.
How much would it cost here?
Well, I know that in Germany it costs €5, which is approximately $7. And I would say that it's probably maybe like $8 in the States. So, which at the beginning, like on the that might sound a lot, like $8. But then if you consider that, you know, first of it's you can use that for like, or it's usually enough for like 2 to 3 months. So that makes like, you know, if you take $8 and then you say 2 months, that's only $4 a month. And then, you know, it's toothpaste, so you don't have to get other toothpaste. So which would also cost a few bucks a month. So it's actually only like maybe $2 additionally each month, which is not really a lot. Yes.
I was just going to ask, was there any look at the dental health and any changes there? Yeah. Is the lab those like plaque tests or?
Well, like the company we're working with, it's quite a quite prestigious company. I mean, they have been in business for several decades producing toothpaste. It's their most like sophisticated toothpaste bases that they were using. It's also natural, how do you say, natural cosmetics?
Yeah.
Does it
Yeah.
have fluoride or anything?
Well, we have, in Germany, we have the fluoride version at the moment, but we have been told that in the American market, people are not so much fond of fluoride, so we'll have a fluoride version in the States, apparently, yes.
Sorry, I just want to say a few things as a vegan physician who's very interested in the topic of B12. Some important things I think people should know is, first of all, one thing is the Europeans have higher rates of B12 deficiency as they grow older. So maybe, I don't know, certain Europeans maybe have more, which explains sometimes the higher rates of B12 deficiency when you're doing some of these local studies. It's interesting, but great presentation. Thank you. I think this is really good. It seems like a really promising option for people. Just in terms of vegan nutrition, when it comes to B12, it's very important. So this is a really important thing to be discussing. But it shouldn't inspire fear. You know, like you want it to be, people take it seriously, but not be fearful or freak out about this whole B12 thing, and then it becomes an issue that people are afraid to become vegan or you're worried about their own health. Good thing to do is always, you know, get your annual checkups, which we do more in Canada, probably Europe. In America, sometimes these healthcare issues you don't. But with your annual checkup, get a B12 test.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And that's important to do. You know where you stand. The next thing is that if you are low, you know, then this may be an option. If you take a supplement, if you're low, then you should always get retested to make sure that it makes a difference. Yeah. Another thing is that, you know, this is again from Dr. Michael Greger and many other people, the most common supplement we take in North America is B12 oral supplement, right? That's the traditional thing. But the one that you should be taking is like 1,000 micrograms. 1,000 micrograms is huge. Most of that's going to go into your body and out through your urine. Okay? But if you take 1,000 micrograms, if you don't have to take it every day. For most people, even if you take it once every week or every 2 weeks, your levels are going to be very high. But if you're worried about it, even if you remember to take it a couple times a week, your B12 level should be okay. Because even people with pernicious anemia, which is a very serious form of intrinsic factor deficiency, taking oral B12 at 1,000 micrograms a day is going to absorb into your system. You're going to get it. You know, people who still have a deficiency after taking 1,000 microgram supplements, there are people who have like very serious intestinal disorders, Crohn's disease, operations that have removed parts of their intestine and stomach. Those kind of people will have trouble that they need to get injections. Nobody really needs to get injections. That's usually just kind of a hocus pocus. And so that's the other thing I was going to address, is that if veganism is natural, why do we have to take a supplement? So the thing is that B12 does not come from animals. B12 comes from bacteria. When the animals eat, they're eating grass, and they're drinking water from streams and lakes and mud, and whatever they get from. There's tons of bacteria everywhere. Once upon a time, when we were eating from the wild, from nature, and drinking water from everywhere, we probably had B12. Soil is very high in B12. My nutrition professor, he said if you take some soil, shake it up in water, filter out the soil, you probably have a lot of B12 in that water. Now, of course, we don't advise anybody to do that, right? You know, but back in the old days, that's probably what happened. So B12 is not an animal product; it's a bacterial product. It's simply that animals eat a lot of soil, and if they live in a factory farm, they're eating their own poo. You know, it's gross, but there's a lot of B12 in their poo. You know, so I don't recommend eating poo either, but it has a lot of B12 in it. You know, so the thing is that so if anybody asks you that why you take the supplement, really, you're going to animals to get something that doesn't actually come from animals. Simply, we live a very hygienic, sanitized life. So this is the one thing that we might need to take as a supplement, but it's important that we should monitor it, take a supplement if we need to, and hopefully we can study this more. And it's interesting, even things like in developing countries, this might be kind of a useful tactic, actually, because that's what I was thinking. I also work in developing countries a little bit, and when people have B12 supplement, B12 deficiency there, having it in place, these kind of, things may be good for even broader audience.
Do you find it, I guess poor countries where their hygiene is not so strong, but they B12 is not a problem?
I was going to ask you to mention something about that. There's a few studies that came out like 10 years ago that in certain development countries, because of sanitary conditions, there were no, in vegetarian, it's only in vegetarian people, not in vegan people, there were no B12 deficiency. India, Argentina.
You know what, we should talk after, so
Yes.
I want to take away from questions.
Well, as far as I know, I've spoken with Stephen Walsh from the Vegan Society about it, and he said that it might be a little better, but it's usually not sufficient. So even like in India, when they drink directly from the well, it doesn't really do it. And also sometimes when people think, oh, I'm not going to wash my carrot, this is not really going to do it. If you want to eat your poo, that might do it, but like just not washing the carrot really does not help. Yes.
Good question. How does the toothpaste taste? And
we can try it.
Sample
Yes. Yes. Okay. Any other? I think we are about to be out of time.
I couldn't tell the